One publicly traded company now holds around 3 billion ENA tokens. That's roughly 20% of ENA's entire 15 billion token supply. The company is StablecoinX. It's listed on the Nasdaq, and its strategy is closely tied to the growth of Ethena. So why does one company control so much ENA, and could this actually be bullish for the token long term? StablecoinX has released its latest financial results and confirmed that its treasury contains approximately 3 billion ENA tokens. At the end of June, that position was worth roughly $280 million US. But there's an important clarification. StablecoinX didn't suddenly go onto exchanges and buy 3 billion ENA. The treasury was largely created through the transaction that formed the company, including ENA contributed by the Ethena Foundation and PIPE investors. StablecoinX then began trading on the Nasdaq in June under the ticker USDe, essentially creating a publicly traded company with massive exposure to the Ethena ecosystem. StablecoinX is essentially making a long-term bet on the Ethena and its digital dollar ecosystem. ENA is Ethena's governance token, so holding 3 billion ENA gives StablecoinX a huge financial interest in seeing the ecosystem succeed. Think about companies that have built a Bitcoin or Ethereum treasury. The basic idea is similar, except StablecoinX is making the bet specifically on Ethena and ENA. The first bullish point is simply supply. StablecoinX holds roughly 1 of every 5 ENA tokens that currently exist. If those tokens are held strategically over the long term rather than actively being traded, that's potentially a huge amount of ENA sitting with a long-term holder. That doesn't mean 20% of ENA has permanently disappeared from circulation, but it's still significant for supply and demand. The second bullish point is that ENA is effectively a publicly traded treasury vehicle. Investors who don't want to directly buy or custody ENA can now gain indirect exposure to the Ethena ecosystem through a Nasdaq-listed company. We've seen similar ideas with Bitcoin and Ethereum treasury companies. I'm not saying StablecoinX will become the strategy of ENA, but it potentially creates another bridge between traditional finance and Ethena. And third, StablecoinX isn't simply holding Ethena, it's also building infrastructure around the Ethena ecosystem. Its decentralized verifier node has already processed more than $3 billion in cumulative cross-chain volume. So StablecoinX has a massive incentive to actually help Ethena grow because it owns so much of the supply. There is one major downside though, concentration. One company controlling around 20% of ENA's total supply is enormous. That's potentially bullish while they're holding, but it could become a risk if significant amounts of those tokens ever move towards the market. And remember, this wasn't simply 3 billion ENA suddenly being bought from exchanges, so this doesn't represent $200 million of fresh buying pressure. Ultimately, ENA still needs the underlying Ethena ecosystem to keep growing. So the biggest takeaway isn't simply that someone owns 3 billion ENA, it's that a Nasdaq-listed company whose strategy is closely tied to Ethena now holds roughly 1/5 of ENA's entire supply. If Ethena continues growing and StablecoinX remains a long-term strategic holder, this could become a very interesting part of long-term ENA investment thesis. 3 billion ENA, roughly 20% of the entire supply, is now sitting inside a company with a very strong reason to want Ethena to succeed. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss future crypto news videos.